Okay, we are going to automate using make.com the transcription of YouTube videos. And then we're going to drop that via API back into our Airtable that we've prepared already. And then we'll be able to repurpose the transcript, create content, and go from there. So this is make.com. You will need a make.com account. I would suggest that this could be your right hand man as you build out using no code tools. Make.com is my go to automation platform, make.com or Zapier. Make.com is my first choice. And so we have make.com. We will also need to connect Airtable, a service called Data for SEO, which you can find at dataforseo.com. That will be the data that we reach out to grab our YouTube transcript and bring it back into make.com. And we'll need to connect Airtable into make.com as well. This is what the automation looks like. We will rebuild this automation and we will build it step by step together and connect it into Airtable as well. So there's some different things to connect in and we'll walk through it together. So this is my Airtable that I use for grabbing YouTube transcripts and then summarizing them so that I can move quickly and learn from YouTube videos if I'm researching a particular subject. And I could do that from Perplexity if I was doing it manually. If I want to do it at scale, then this is what I use. I use this Airtable. And I'm showing you this so that you can see the different views that we've got in here. We've got different views and we use the views as a trigger. If I take something in to the input view, perhaps I use the Chrome extension web clipper, bring data into one view, and then when I'm ready, I can change the stage of publishing or the status in this particular Airtable setup, which looks like this. I've got to do get the data in progress, get AI summary, review, which would be a manual quality assurance step, archive to Notion, and then done. So those are the different steps that I use in that particular table. But we will use our table that we've already begun to build out together, which looks like this. And we've got 11 posts in here. And if you remember that we were using this publishing stage data point to manage the flow of our records through this particular Airtable, and then we can use these views as hooks. That's where we are. Let's go and get a YouTube video to start with, and that'll be the video that we can work with. So if I use the Chrome extension, we'll go and get this particular video. I select the description, use my web clipper that we set up already. We can get the URL, clean up this title or here manually. Okay, we'll add this record. If we go back to our Airtable, we can see that this one just arrived. The pro sounding beginner drum fills. Let's use this as our example. So the data points we've got at the moment are a title, we've got the URL, YouTube title, and then a YouTube description. So let's add in a new field so that we can make room for the transcription when we get it back again. So let's just add it in at the end here. And if we say we're going to use long text to receive it, give it a description, say YouTube API transcript. So long text, and we'll create the field. So it's here on the end. I'll leave it there for now. Okay, let's also have a trigger view so that when a record moves into that view, then we can use that as a way to send a signal out to make.com. We'll start with this and then we'll move over to make.com. Rather than send to Webflow, Let's just right click on that, duplicate the view, move it up a step. And the title is selected, so we can just type and we want to say, get YouTube transcript. I double click on that, I'll copy it, and then let's go and give ourselves a way to filter. So we'll edit the publishing stage. We'll add an option, get YouTube transcript. Doesn't have to match the name of the view, but let's just do that for clarity. We'll pop it in here. And let's filter the view and get YouTube transcript to say the publishing stage that we've set already is get YouTube transcript. And then back to our grid view. Yeah, let's change the status, publishing status of our newest record. This is the one we want to work with. So I'll change that to get YouTube transcript. I'll hit space, I can see that. Our pro sounding beginner drum fills, that's our YouTube video. And then the publishing stage is set to get YouTube transcript. Escape out of that, go to the view, and we can see that that record has come in here now. Before we go over to make.com, we are going to use something that we would describe as not no code, but super low code. I'm going to give you a small script to paste into an Airtable automation so that when a record comes into this view, then we are going to use that automation to send a signal over to Make, and we will send a webhook. We'll fire a webhook, some data over to a particular URL that we get from make.com, and make.com will catch that hook, receive the data, and then we can work with it inside of make.com. So the way that we would do that is we go to automations, and I'm going to just show you in the original base how that's set up, and then we'll bring it over into this base, okay? Automations over here. We want to say that this automation, when a record enters a view into this particular view, then we're going to run a script. And if we click on the script here and scroll up, we'll set it up on the right-hand side here. So the action is to run a script. Configuration will be the record that we're dealing with, which is the record that's come in. So that comes from this particular step here. And then we're going to use a script. And this is the code that we're going to take across to our live base. So I'll copy this just now, and I'll give this to you inside of the lesson so you can download it. When a record enters a view, run a script, and this is the script. So let's go over and set that up. So we need a new automation. We'll just give it the same title as our view. So get YouTube transcript. And we're going to say when a record enters a view. So this is much like make.com and Zapier. We're building an automation. We have a trigger, and then we have an action or multiple actions that happen after the fact. So when a record enters the view, and which table is it? It's the content staging table. It's the only one we have. And which view, we're going to say get YouTube transcript. And then we're going to use a suggested record just to test it, to bring that in. Then we've got the record, the only record that we've already put into that view. We can see that's come through. That's good. And then if we go to the next step then, we want to run a script. Just going to paste that code in underneath. So I select all, and I paste it in this code, and we can go over to test. So what that's going to do is it's going to fire some data over to this particular URL, but we're going to update that URL because we haven't set that up inside of make.com. We've started with this setup on the Airtable side. It seems happy because the hook's been received, but this is not the hook that we're going to use in the end, so we will update that. So if we come out of here, come out of finish editing, or click finish editing to come out, and if we go over to make.com to set up this first part, and what we'll do is I'll show you a couple of ways to get an automation into your make.com account so that you can start not from scratch, but you start with a leg up. And there are two ways to do it. You will either receive a blueprint from me, which you can download, and then you push that into make.com, or the other way to do it would be to copy and paste in existing elements from another automation already in your make.com account. Let's go and look at that first. I want to just create a new scenario. I could click on it here, and you can create a folder structure on the left-hand side here if you want to do that. I could do this here, but just to keep things more straightforward for the video, I'm just going to duplicate a blank scenario. Oh, I think I clicked on it by accident. Okay, so we'll clone this scenario, and we'll say this is get YouTube transcript. We'll say this is No Code Mavericks, get YouTube transcript. We don't need to bring any data from the previous scenario because it was blank. So hit save. Okay, so this is a blank scenario. We haven't clicked into it yet. So to edit this, we click in here and we want to get our modules into this make scenario. So I'll show you how to get data in a couple of ways. First of all, so let's do that. If I show you in this, okay, so this is an existing make scenario that I have, and I'm going to export the blueprint so it comes down. And if we go back to our new one, our blank one, we're going to import that blueprint. And so this is our blank scenario that we created, and then you've imported a blueprint. And I'll give you this blueprint to download in the lesson. And download it, you can load it straight in, and then you'll have to go along and make your connections. That's one way to get data in. And if I hold down the shift key, I can select individual modules that we could delete one at a time if we wanted to. Or I could take them all, hold down the shift key, select them all, and we could delete and we'd be back to the start. If I hit this magic wand, auto align down here, it just brings everything back together again. So that's one way to do it. And the other way to do it would be to copy and paste. So let me bring these tabs along. So same again, in the same way that I selected all the modules so that I could delete them, I can actually select all, Command C or Control C to copy, and then I go over to our blank module and I can click on the screen, right click and paste. I'm going to allow. If we just take this blank one, put it over here. That's a second way to bring modules in that already exist in your account. For example, if you already have existing scenarios saved either for your own use or saved as templates, then that's two ways that you can move data around within your account. You could just have two tabs open. You can copy and paste from one tab into another browser tab if you prepared the scenario to receive the modules. So what we'll do is let's just clean things up a little bit. We'll take away these breaks and we'll show you how to connect these up. This is important to show you that there's only ever one initial module in a scenario, and it's defined by this little clock here. So sometimes a clock. I'll show you that later. So it's changed from a clock because we can't schedule a webhook to happen at a specific time. We would have a webhook respond as soon as data comes in. So that's why that's changed. If I moved it back onto here, I would be able to set the entire scenario to run at regular intervals at these different times of the day. So this is just looking at when the scenario runs, when it goes out to look for data and performs that action. But we want to have a setup where when data is received by the automation, it's always ready, it's always waiting. And when the data comes in, then the automation runs. So we can kill off, just right click on the module we don't need there. And then let's get this in a line. So we hit the auto align. These are the modules in Make that we need. Most of these modules, these are the useful modules for this particular setup then. So the way into the front of the automation is that we have this module that's going to catch a webhook, and then we're going to pass the data that comes in from Airtable. Make catches the data from Airtable with this webhook, passes it along the line to Airtable, and then we can reach out and get the right record from Airtable. So we get an ID from Airtable, and then we use an Airtable module that goes back to Airtable and says, I have this ID. Give me all of the data you have for that particular record ID, brings that back into make.com. And part of that data will be our YouTube URL. And then we can go into this module here, which is data for SEO. We'll set that up in a second. We call out to data for SEO, bring back the YouTube transcript, which comes to us in what's called an array. So not just a single envelope, it would be like a stack of envelopes of data. And each envelope has an individual line of the transcript. And so in this stack of envelopes, it's a bit unwieldy. So we're going to use the next module to say all of the data that's in that stack of envelopes, let's pull it all out and stick it together so it's one big long string, one big long text string. So that's what this module does. And then we can go back to Airtable and say, I have this data, which is a YouTube transcript. I'm going to send it back to you, and you should store it in this particular record. So that's what each of these steps accomplishes for us. Let's do this. We don't want to choose a hook. In fact, let's do it this way. If we select all, so I'm going to copy this and then I'm going to paste in below. I wonder how it'll align if I do this. Okay, not very well. Let's delete this, do it again. Let's build this out one at a time. And each time we add a module, because it would be good for you to be able to move quickly and just copy and paste or upload the blueprint. But let's build it out one step at a time. And that will help us to understand where to go to get these particular modules from. And then once you have that understanding moving forward, we can just use the blueprints to share data. And then we could use the copy and paste method as well if we want to move more quickly. I'm going to right click down here and we're going to rebuild this scenario that we have up at the top. We'll rebuild it down below so that you can see how to do that. So we're going to add a module and click on the module and search and say webhook. We want to grab custom webhook, which means it triggers when a webhook receives data. This is the one. So we click on this and we have to set up each of our modules the first time that we use them. A webhook you would have to set up every time because it's like an address. The URL is an address. And so you would want a brand new address for every webhook that you use. For the most part, for most situations, you would want a brand new address. So we need a new address. So let's say we're not going to choose a hook. We're going to add a hook. So if we say no code Mavericks, and we'll say get YouTube transcript, which is the same as the title of the scenario. But again, it's just for clarity. It's not essential. And we'll hit save. Now, what we've been given is a webhook which is the address for this particular scenario where we can send data to. So what it's doing at the moment is it's looking for data. It's waiting for data to be sent to this address so that it can say, yes, this is complete. You've successfully sent data into this webhook. We're good to go. You can go on to the next module. First of all, what we want to do is we want to copy the address to the clipboard, and we go back to our script, and we're going to edit this code and change out the URL. Let's just see what we've been given. Okay. So just to this question mark here, paste in the new one, take away that third line. Okay, we're good to go. We're going to test it now. So when I click test, I'm not going to wait here. I'm going to go back to the make scenario so you can see that update. So we'll click test. We're back to the scenario here. We'll wait to see if the data is received in here. Okay, successfully determined. So what happened there was we grabbed the URL, the address for this make scenario. We went back to Airtable. We set it up and sent a test packet of data, which has now been received by this webhook. We are good to go. So we can click OK here. And if that failed, we would want to troubleshoot and figure out what's going wrong there. But it's a relatively simple process where you take the address from make, you go, you send a test packet of data and wait for that to be received in make.com. Okay. So that's the first part. And then we want to go to the second part now. So if we hit plus, we want to go to Airtable and we want to get a record. This retrieves a single record by its ID. And we're sending the ID into make.com in the webhook. And then we're going to use that data to find the correct ID. But before we go any further, we want to connect, bearing in mind that in your account, likely you won't already have a connection to Airtable. This is how you would do that. You would make sure that your browser is already logged into Airtable, and then you click on add, and we can say OAuth connection, and we'll say no code Mavericks, and we'll call it Airtable content, something, what did we call this before? Content creation base. Okay, so Airtable, just for clarity, content creation base. Okay, now, when we hit save, make.com is going to call out to Airtable and say, hey, I've got this guy. He wants to connect us both together. Do you recognize this guy? Is that okay? Is he already logged in? And it'll make the connection. So let's see how that goes. Click save. We've got an extra dialog is opened. And we want to say add a base. Which base do we want to add? We can do two things. We can add a collection of bases from Airtable and give blanket approval for all bases, or we could take one particular base and tie it down to that. So what we'll do is I'll just do one for the whole, all current and future bases in this particular workspace. That works for me. And then I'm going to grant access and we'll let that complete. Verifying connection. And we're good to go. And then we want to say base is our content one. So if I click in the magnifying glass, type content, we've got content creation base. So we're going out to get a record from that base. And the table is content staging. It's the only table that we have in our base. And this final input is waiting for the ID of the Airtable record. Now, because we want it to happen every single time and we want to automate this process, we're not going to type in the record ID. We're going to ask for the previous step to pass us that data. So we need to map it to the webhook data that came in. So I click here and we've got this extra dialog that's opened on the right-hand side, which is a very short list at the moment. But the more modules that lie to the left of the module that we're working on, then the longer that list will be with prepared data that we can map into this particular module. So what are we looking for in the Airtable input? We're looking for a record ID. So we go inside the data that comes from webhook, which has a number, webhook's 28. And if you have multiple modules that look the same or are the same type of module, then you'll be able to tell the different ones based on the number that comes after their title. So we can see webhooks 28 here, and that's represented in here, webhooks 28. We want to click on record ID. I can see if I click out of that dialog, that's been populated into the record ID input. We can click OK. That's the next part. Okay, so let's save there. Webhook's value must not be empty. Okay, that's fine. That's referencing this top line here. So what we'll do is we'll make this bottom line our active line. You're not going to have two lines like this anyway. This is just as we build out. Let's actually just delete this module. And let's leave it in just now. Unlike. Okay, I don't want to troubleshoot that just then. Let's keep going. Airtable in here is already set up. This one is set up already, so that's good for us. And then data for SEO, this is the one that we want to set up now. You need to go to dataforseo.com and set up an account, and then we'll make the connection. Once you have an account, you'd be given a free balance to begin with, which gives you enough data to start to play with calling out via the API to learn this process. Give you $1 of credit, which lasts a while. And if you wanted to continue to use data for SEO, then you would have to fund the account to continue to use it. But for today, create an account in dataforseo.com. And once you are up and running and logged in, then you can click on API access in the left-hand column, and you'll get your API credentials. The password, which is an important part of connecting data for SEO into another platform, this password is only available, I think, for 24 hours. Yeah, it remains visible for 24 hours. So you may want to make a note of your login and the password so that you can set it up. But once you make the connection in Make, it will be made, and you don't need to go back and reestablish that. So you need your login and your password, and we'll go back to Make, and I'll show you how to set that up then. Let's bring this back here. Okay, so you're going to click on plus and click on search, data for SEO, and we want to make an API call. And then we're going to set this up. So at this point, we're going to go to the data for SEO API documentation so that we can look through there to find the endpoint that we're looking for. The endpoint is the URL that we call out to ask for information. And we need to make that connection. So let's make the connection first. I already have mine set up, but if you were to do that, you click on add, you click on the login and add in your email address that's registered with dataforseo.com. And then, as we said, that password that disappears inside the Data for SEO dashboard after 24 hours, you would paste that into here and hit save. And that would deal with the credentials for making the communication with the API. Once you've done that, then we need to go to the documentation. Let me pull the documentation back here. In fact, if I close that, I'll show you how to get to there. So in the dashboard for Data for SEO, we can just scroll up a little, how to make your first API call, click on our docs, and the documentation opens in a new tab. And then we are looking for YouTube data. So there's all sorts of different data that you can pull back from this service, but we're looking for search engine results, and then YouTube, video subtitles, That's the way that we're grabbing our transcript back from YouTube, and then we'll go to live and advanced. That's where we need to be. And so we're going to take a couple of pieces of data from this page and bring them back to our make.com scenario. So first of all, we need to know that the request that we're making to the API is a post request, and we need to know this URL. So we'll just copy this URL, go back to set up this module, and I'm going to paste in the whole URL that we copied from data for SEO. But there's a footnote underneath this URL input. It says enter a path relative to this part of the URL. And it says, for example, slash, and then it has a path. So what it's saying to us is that this first part, HTTPS all the way up to v3, we don't need this. And we only want to put the path into the URL input. We want the slash on the front, and we'll take away everything that is already represented down here up to v3. And so we've taken the URL from the documentation and then just chopped off the main domain up to v3. And then the methods of API request is not a GET request. As we saw in the documentation, we're looking for a POST request. So we'll click on here and put POST. That just means that we're not going out to get data. What we're doing is we're actually sending information into the API, and then they'll send something back. So we're posting data to the API. Okay, the headers, it's the content type and application that's already in there, so we don't need to worry about the headers now. And you would normally need, with an API request, you would need an authentication somewhere in the packet of data that you send. But because we're inside of make.com and we've made that connection using our login and our password already, then Make is going to handle the authentication for us, and we don't need to define it inside of this module. So we can close this up. We don't need to worry about the headers. We do need to send data in the body of this module, the body of the request. So if we reference this one up here, what we're going to do is we want to figure out a packet of data that we want to send. And there's two things we have to do now. First of all, we're going to go to the documentation and take an example, and then we'll come into Make, and we will have to map in the YouTube URL from the step below that we get back from Airtable. Let's go to the documentation first, and we will go to this data raw section. Okay, so this is an example API request, and that helps us to understand what we need to send into an API. And it looks the same as this, relatively similar across all sorts of different API documentations, depending on the platform, but there will be some reference on the page that helps you to understand the packet of data that you need to send. And we're going to send it in JSON, which I know that this is JSON because I recognize it from the square brackets and the curly brackets and the setup. So we don't want the quotes. We'll copy this and go back to our module. So our new module, we're going to paste this in. So let's just tidy this up a little. Take out the spaces, just so visually it makes more sense for us. Okay. And what we have, if I just click OK here, we'll go back in again. And what we have is a language code, which is English, location code. So these are standard. We're not going to change those, but the video ID we do want to change. And so because we want to automate it, we need to grab the YouTube URL from the step before. And there's different ways that we could do this in our automation. We could do something in Airtable where we could have another column of data. Perhaps we could use a formula in Airtable to strip out the ID strip off a particular domain so that we're left without youtube.com and just the ID. But we're going to do it for now inside of Make, which is a powerful way to do it. Airtable would be just as valid, but we just need to make a choice, and we're going to do it inside of here. Okay. So I'll delete that example YouTube ID, and we're going to reference the other module that I already have set up. What we need to do is we want to take the YouTube URL and we want to strip off part of it. And there's a function, a text function inside of make.com that allows us to take a string of text and then to get a substring from it, just to take part of it. And it can seem a bit confusing to begin with, but we'll just build this out. And as we go and as we build out more modules and more scenarios, then these text functions will begin to make more sense. So if we go and first of all, let's just copy this one. Copy this. We'll go into data for SEO. I'm just going to paste this here. So this is what we're working with. Bring this up higher. Okay, so this top one, we need to make look like the bottom one. So we're in the video ID, we're within quotes, and I've clicked in. I could click out of the input. Once I click into the input in the right area, then we get this dialog that opens up here. So we have all of the Airtable data points that we could map. We've got the webhook data point. We've got the webhook data point that we could map. And what we would like to do is we want to get the YouTube URLs. If we start with that, we can go to the Airtable data, can expand this, go down to YouTube URL. And once we click on this, we've mapped in the YouTube URL. Now, I know that's no use for us because data for SEO is not asking for a YouTube URL. It's asking for a YouTube ID, a video ID, and we want to give that to them. So we need to pull out the correct part of the URL, which is the ID. So if you can see the cursor is just after YouTube URL. And if we go into search, we just type substring. We click on substring or hover over substring, and we can see some information. It says substring, text, start, and end. It's going to give us this. When I click on substring, it's going to drop that into the input. So just hover here, or just where we want it to go inside the quotes. We click on substring, and we get this almost template set up for us. So it says substring, and there's a gap, semicolon, and bracket. So we need to pop some data inside each of those points. So if we just use the cursor to move back to the right place, depending on where we are within that template that it's laid out for us, it's giving us some help text above in the gray box. So here we are, substring text. And what we'd like to go in there, as you can see from the example below, we want the YouTube URL to go in there. So we can actually just drag it because we have it there already. So drag it into the right spot. So now we've got substring brackets open and YouTube URL, because this is the text string, which it will be a YouTube URL that we're dealing with. As we map it, it says YouTube URL, but as Make receives it, it's a YouTube URL, youtube.com, and then the ID. That's where we start. Let's go into the next part and see what we need. So we need the start position. Well, if we go and look at this particular URL that we're using, so in the URL at the top here, there's only one equals sign in the whole URL, and it says v equals. So we could say v equals, but we can just as easily say equals, and we want everything after the equals. We are going to say YouTube URL, and then we want to add in another modifier. It gets complicated where these modifiers are nested inside of one another, but we'll keep going. The modifier that we need to drop into here, as you can see in the example, is index of. And one good way to keep track of these things is just to have make.com/en/help open. And then you can just search through this and you get an update on the vast listing of modifier functions and all the other parts of make. It's just a good reference to have. But we'll keep going inside of here, and we want to use index of. So I'm going to click in here where I want the the data to go, I'll take out substring and I'll type in index. And that, if I click now, it's going to go in the wrong place. I need to go back to here again. Click on index of. And it says, this returns a portion of a text string between the start position and the end position. We want to say a substring, and this text that we're dealing with is the URL, YouTube URL. And then we want to do index of, which is nested into the correct place within substring. And we want to say, what are we dealing with index of? What's actually the YouTube URL? So we come back here, you can clear that and just click on YouTube URL. If we get it in the right place, index of goes in here. Okay. And then we want to say the part we're looking for is, and then if we go back to our example URL, at the moment, what's happening is that we're going to use the YouTube URL, we're going to find the equals, and then we're going to give everything that comes after that point back into, we're going to strip out everything after that point. But if I leave it as it is, it will give me equals and then the ID. And I don't want equals plus the ID, I just want the ID. So we need to tell it that, yes, it's equals, but we want it to be plus one character. And that just means that make will move along one step to skip out equals and give us the rest of it. So I can go into the maths functions here, hit plus, it's in the wrong place, got to click again, plus, and then we'll type 1, so that's one character. And coming to the last part here, substring index of, and then the last one is length. So we'll go back to search. And we'll want to tell it how long is the string that we're dealing with. And we're just going to say the length of it is the same length as the YouTube URL. Okay, and we're done. So we can take away this example one on the bottom and hit OK. So what we can do is every time we complete a module, we can actually test the individual module. We could click run once here for the whole thing, but we could actually just test each individual module, which is useful sometimes. Sometimes it creates a problem because we would just have to type in a big long piece of data. But if I go to this URL and just grab the ID, hit copy, go back here, I right click on the module and I say run this module only. And it says, okay, that's great. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to send it to this URL. I'm going to post it. The headers that we're going to send are these ones, which is the content type, which is JSON. And here's the body that I'm going to send that you've defined, Graham. And then it says, hey, which record do you want me to use? So I need to define that because it's not pulling anything from a previous step in the scenario. So I hit paste and I hit OK. We watched it think, we watched it load, and once it was ready, it's opened up this dialog and it says, this is what I have. So for this module that we tested, this was the input, and this is what was sent out to the API. And then we've got this bundle back. Status code 200, brilliant, that's good news. 200 is, it worked well. And we can just click to expand each of these data points that came back. This just shows us all the data that came back from our API request. And the items. Now, this part is important because what we have, this is the data that's come back from the transcript. And this big list of data points is an array. It's a collection of data points, a collection of objects. And we can see here, there are 93 objects. Now, if we click into each one, we're going to see the text from each one. Are you ready to play some simple but? Now we go to the second packet of data. text very cool drum fills, then if you can imagine subtitles on the bottom of a screen, that's what's happening here. It's serving up these individual packets of data, these text strings onto the screen when it gets to that part. Now that's fine for subtitles. It's no use for us, and we want to join that together. So in our example, we have 93 envelopes or 93 objects, and we want to take the text from each of these objects and join these text data points together using a space. And that's what we're doing. Okay, tools. We could type tools, but we could also type string, compose a string, and that's what we're looking for our next module. Let's look at the example. So what we're going to do is we're going to use some text modifiers from make, and we're going to use this function, which as I hover over it here, it tells me what it's going to do. It's going to join the array of data together, and it's going to look for a particular separator. Or it's going to use a particular character in between each of the packets of data that it stitches together. It concatenates them. It brings them together into one long line. And we are saying the separator you should use is a space. And then when we say to the function where to go to get the data, we're going to say, okay, I'll map it for you. And here I've mapped where to go to get the data. Let's build this out in our own one. If we copy this just for reference, come down to tools, and paste this in, and we'll build it out here above, okay? First of all, we want to hit search and we can say join. So we want this function join, and we're going to put it here. And then inside the first part, we're going to map. So we're going to get data. We're going to map it into this location. So we go to join and search for map. And then every time I come over here to search, I have to reestablish the position where we want this new function to go. Click on map. And then we want to go to body, tasks, result, items. So let's map that in. So we clear this, and we're looking at the data for SEO module. We're not looking at, okay, the only data that's there is the data for SEO module that we've tested. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to accidentally go to data for SEO number 18. I'm looking at data for SEO number 30, which is our active module. And it's the one we just tested and brought a packet of data into. And because we tested that module and brought the data in, then we can see that it's available to us now to map. So let's go to map to get the right location. And we're going to say, if we reference this example, body, tasks, result, items. So we're going to go to the body of data that came in. We're going to go to the tasks, and then we'll go to result, just down here. And then we'll go to items, which is down here. And once I click on this, you can see it's been mapped in. Now, this has also been mapped from our example that we pasted in, but it's not highlighted. It has a white background, a blank background, and that just means, yes, it's been mapped, but Make is telling us it's a visual cue to say, I don't know where that data is. That doesn't make sense. And we can see that the real one that we've just mapped in to the active module is highlighted. It's a visual cue to say that's good. Okay, and there's a particular data point in the array items. So items is the array of envelopes or multiple objects. And we want to say the particular part that we would like to grab. So we want all of the text. So if we click on text, did I do that correctly? I did not. Should be 1 over. Okay, we can type in text. Okay, that's good. Brackets. And then what do we want to use to separate uh, each packet? Every time we take a packet of text data and stitch it onto the last one, what do we want to have? Do we want to have a dash or a slash? We just want a space. That's the character we're going to use to join the concatenated text strings together. And if we go up here, it's an actual function. Okay, we can clean out this bottom one. Hit OK. We'll unclosed variable. So let's just see what I did wrong there. Map. Body task result items, semicolon. That's fine. And then I've got one too many of this, I think. Okay, so I just clicked it twice. I mapped it twice. And separate by space. I think that's happy. Okay, I think we're good to go. And now if I was to test this module, run this module, we would have to add in a big list of objects to see it all joined together. And we'd have to set that up properly. So we're not going to do that just now. We're just going to assume that it's good to go. And we'll go on to the last part, which is Airtable. So we need to update our record. So this first Airtable module, we reached out to Airtable and we said, get a record. And this one, we're going to update a record. So hit plus, Airtable. We've already mapped our connection to Airtable. We already have a connection. So we don't have to do it for every module that we set up now. Airtable knows, you can actually see on the left-hand side here, we could click on connections and that would show us all of the connections that we have for Airtable and data for SEO and webhooks are separate down here as well. So we want to update a record. Which account do we want to use? We're going to use this connection. That's a strange one. Let's see what that was. I think I haven't given it enough access. Let's see. Can access the following bases and workspaces. You can only grant access to bases and workspaces you have access to. Is that because I've not saved it? I'm not sure. Let's see. Grant access. Okay, so that's happy for now. I'll look back on that later and see what was wrong with that. Well, you shouldn't have to do that every time. Base. We are dealing with our content base, content creation base. So we're telling this module what we want to update. The table is content staging. And the record ID, we could take it from two different places. We could go back to here. We could say this record ID that came in with a webhook. That would be a fine way to do it. Or we can go to Airtable, our earlier Airtable module, which is number 29, you can see here, as opposed to Airtable 16. We're dealing with this bottom row, so Airtable 29. And we could say that's the ID. Either one of those options would be fine to do. And then we want to update something. So we're going to say, we may have to run this first before we get it to map properly, but we're going to look for a data point in here, which is the YouTube API transcript. And we want to say that this text that we've created here from the compose a string module, we want to map that into here. We'll click here and hit OK. And why don't we do something different as well? Why don't we just say that we're going to move that record. If that happens successfully, we'll move that record in somewhere as well. We can finish editing here. This was our webhook in Airtable. We can say that that's good to go. Switch that on. and come back to data. Okay, so get YouTube transcript. We want to say, we could either automate the next step or we could build in a manual step for quality assurance, for QA. So I think we'll do that. If we say the next view, duplicate the view, we could say check YouTube transcript. And then we'll have to do something to our publishing stages, edit field, and we can say, copy this, check YouTube transcript. And let's move that to the correct place as well. Take that, we'll move it just to underneath get YouTube transcript. Hit save. And then let's just go back to make, and we can say that we want to automate that. So when we're updating this record, we could also say that the publishing stage, so we're not going to map it. So we're not going to bring it from an earlier step. We're actually just going to define it explicitly. So I'm going to uncheck this map. That gives us a drop-down menu. So every time we get to this particular stage, then we want it to go to this publishing stage. And we can say, okay. If we go, let's just go and try that now then. We've set that all up. I'm going to kill off this top row that we don't need. And I'm going to save. So we've got No Code Mavericks get YouTube transcript. This is an automation, it's standalone. And now we could say that we can click to run once and we'll see what happens. So if I click run once, it makes an attempt to run the whole scenario. So the webhook is now in waiting mode. It would be like saying, switching it on, but we're only switching it on for one run. And so what we need to do is we need to go back to Airtable again and then manually trigger the record to come into make, and then we can catch the webhook, okay? So we come in here, we're going to take this one, and we'll change the status back to draft content, and then immediately then we can change it back to get YouTube transcript, and that's brought that record back into the view again. We'll go back to make, then this should hopefully see something and respond appropriately. So we've had something fail straight away, but what's happened is we've got the record ID was undefined. Let's find out why that was undefined. I need to troubleshoot this and fix it. So what are we sending from the automation? Let's see. Let's trigger this again and we'll say run once. Let's do it again a different way. Get YouTube transcript. And we're going to say when a record enters this view, get YouTube transcript. And we are going to send a packet of data and then we'll run this script. So let's do this part, test this part. Choose a record to run with. I'm going to use this one. So that's passed it into this stage of the automation. We'll go to the next step. I didn't add the input variable. I think that's what it is. Edit code. Okay, so Airtable record ID. So I just haven't created a variable. I think that's what it is. So extra step, add input variable, and we're going to call this whatever we're referring to in here, my record. And the value, I think that's where I am. Yeah, my record. And then the value is going to be the record ID from earlier. So what we did in error was I sent data to this URL, but I hadn't defined this end part of the URL, and I've done that now. So this is the variable that's going to go out to that URL. So I think that's Word. If I hit test now, go back to make. Let's just save this in your table and then we'll go for it. Okay, I'm finished editing. Update. That should be good to go. So back to data. Let's force this again. And I'll show us a way around this as well. Back to draft content, takes it out of this view. Get YouTube transcript, brings it back into this view. And make should see that coming now. And react accordingly. It's not stopped yet. Let's refresh. This is me in figure it out mode. You will need a figure it out mode when you're working with automations. So we're going to run once. We've got a message from make. Says there's unprocessed data in the webhook queue. Do you want to wait for new data or use the existing data? We'll use the existing data, which was the packet of test data that I already sent, and it just was held up because I'd requested this to stop the test. It was halfway through, so it's gotten confused. Let's use the existing data and see what happens. Webhook successful. Airtable get record successful. So just let's follow it along. We've got this record ID being passed into here. So we're not clicking on the modules. We're clicking on these thought bubbles, which is the packets of data that were sent in and out. So input and output. So we can see this data from Airtable. Go along. We made the request. Status 200 when it came back. Tools, the text that we get out. Okay, so the text that was put into that module is, so it just represents the concatenated text already in here. And then when we go to Airtable, update a record, that looks like it's been done. So if we go back to Airtable, so I'm looking at this view. As soon as I click away from this record, what it's doing right now is it's paused on this record because I've clicked on it. And once I click away from it, it will follow through what it would like to do, which is to move views. So click away. Maybe we didn't set up a view. It's basically changed the publishing stage. So it's at check YouTube transcription. So check YouTube transcript, but we didn't update this, I think. So we want to check. So we've got something that's moved from a grid view. We've updated the status on that particular line item in the database. It's moved it into get YouTube transcript view, which sends a signal to make. Make runs its process, and it's taken the URL, pulled in the transcript, and updated the data point here so that we can see the transcript. And then it's updated the publishing stage as well. So we've automated the API process using Make. We've automated the retrieval of a YouTube transcript and pulled it back into our visual database. And that stage alone is a powerful step in the sense that now we've got the transcript that we want to do something with. We're going to repurpose it and create a post and then publish it into Webflow. So that was successful in Make. And we just want to save. And before we leave Make, sometimes the API is going to freak out whether we have pinged the API too often and we have broken through our allowance, and the API will say, hey, you've asked too many times, just settle down. Or maybe there's an error on the other side and something's corrupted and it just is that the API is down. The platform that we're trying to communicate with might be down for maintenance, a variety of reasons. But what we want to do is we want to build in an error handler. And we want to be able to say, if something goes wrong when you're communicating with the API, then just hold the phone And we want to say, try again 3 times and let's leave 15 minutes in between each try. Uh, a few things we need to do for that. First of all, we need to tell this scenario that it's okay to save data when something fails so that we can retry. So that's the first thing to do. So we want to say allow, so we're clicking on this cog down here, scenario settings, allow storing of incomplete executions. And we want to say yes. I'm not sure why that's already updated, but perhaps because the blank scenario was already done like that. Yes, allow storing of incomplete executions. That's good for us. Probably that setting happened when I pulled in the blueprint automatically, that updated. But usually on a brand new scenario, that would not be updated. And then we want to click on Airtable, right click, and we want to say add error handler. And we're going to say we're going to use the break module. So automatically complete the execution. Yep, we want to try to do that. A number of attempts, we want to try 3 times and we want to leave 15 minutes in between each attempt. And so that's for the first Airtable module. Let's do it for data for SEO, add error handler. And if we don't add these in and something fails like that, the automation is just going to stop completely. And so we're building in an easy time for ourselves so that we're not chasing back in. It just goes a long way to take away a lot of the errors that might come back into your Make account because we're giving it a way to handle something when it comes up. It's like having an employee and saying, hey, listen, if this goes wrong, don't come running to me. Try this, try 3 times, wait 15 minutes in between each attempt. And then if it still fails, then come back to me. We're just training our automation to handle errors without coming back to us immediately. So add the last error handler break, same one again. And you could update those settings, but we'll just run with these standard ones. We'll hit save, see how it auto aligns. Okay, so, and we'll save that alignment. At the moment, this automation is switched off, but because it is up and running, it's ready to go. I'm going to switch this on because it's ready to go. Toggle this on, and I'm going to delete old data, which is old test data. Are you sure you want to delete the data in the webhook queue? Yep, that's fine. And so this is on. We'll click save, and it's good to go. And if I take this title is pulled in from the blueprint as well. So if we say get YouTube transcript, click save, and we are done. That's how you automate the retrieval of a YouTube transcript using make.com.